Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. This is, I am your host, Gordon McCormick. I'm here at Badlands Media, aka the Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. Today is February 20th, 2026. I want to jump right into this press conference that Trump's doing on the tariffs right now. We're going to start there. So let me pull this up. I know we're streaming this live on Badlands Media right now. We're just going to listen into the tail end of it.
The hottest country in the world. We're going to keep it that way. Thank you very much, everybody.
Well, we just missed it. So
thank you.
Is what it is.
Mr. President. Did you say 32,000?
Okay. Well, anyway, I was listening to that. That was a very, very based conversation. We're going to jump in and we're going to start with that story because this is like just insane that this is happening right now. Trump just said that the Supreme Court's owned by foreign interests, or at least beholden to them, which is very based, probably true. I think our entire federal government is completely illegitimate. I think every facet of it, I think, is owned and controlled by foreign interests. I think foreign interests have infiltrated our government. I don't think that's like a hot take. I don't think that's like a controversial take. I think that's actually exactly why President Trump was elected, is because the world understands that. The people understand that elections are fake. He wasn't even elected. It was a mandate. It was a public mandate that the deep state couldn't stop. So let's go to, I'm going to pull this back up, and I want to back up to earlier when Trump jumps in. Let's just kind of go to the very beginning of Trump, and we'll listen to the first few minutes, and then we're not going to listen to the whole thing because it's like 45 minutes long. But let's listen to him for a few minutes. We'll let him introduce the topic. And the boss seems pissed, and I love it when the boss is pissed because that means heads are going to roll.
Wow. Got a lot of people. That's a new record. We set a record every time. Well, thank you very much for being here. The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. I'd like to thank and congratulate Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for their strength and wisdom and love of our country, which is right now very proud of those justices. When you read the dissenting opinions, there's no way that justices. When you read the dissenting opinions, there's no way that.
Wait a minute. We just got raided over to our own stream.
The left Democrats, and not a new record. We set a record every time. Well, thank you very much for being here. The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. I'd like to thank and congratulate Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for their strength and wisdom and love of our country, which is right now very proud of those justices. When you read the dissenting opinions, there's no way that anyone can argue against them. There's no way. Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic. They're so happy. And they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long, that I can assure you. The Democrats on the court are thrilled, but they will automatically vote no. They're an automatic no, just like in Congress, they're an automatic no. They're against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again. They also are a, frankly, disgrace to our nation, those justices. They're an automatic no, no matter how good a case you have, it's a no. You can't knock their loyalty. It's one thing you can do with some of our people. Others think they're being politically correct, which has happened before far too often with certain members of this court. And it's happened so often with this court. What a shame. Having to do with voting in particular. When in fact, they're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats, and not that this should have anything at all to do with it. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution. It's my opinion that the court has been swayed by foreign interests and a political movement that is far smaller than people would ever think.
Boom, there it is right there. We're going to listen for like another minute or two, but that's right there. That's the headline. I think the courts have been swayed by foreign interests. That is foreign infiltration of our government at the highest levels. And the only way to deal with that, I think, is a military response. That's the only way you can deal with it. Whatever that military response is, doesn't have to be kinetic, but I don't understand how you can have a government that is controlled by an external entity. That's not a government. That is a slave system.
A small movement. I won by millions of votes. We won in a landslide. With all the cheating that went on, there was a lot of it. We still won in a landslide. Too big to rig. But these people are obnoxious, ignorant, and loud. They're very loud. And I think certain justices are afraid of that. They don't want to do the right thing. They're afraid of it. This was an important case to me, more as a symbol of economic national security. And also, I would say, just for our country itself, so important, because we're doing so well as a country. We've never done so well. The good news is that there are methods, practices, statutes, and authorities as recognized by the entire court in this terrible decision, and also as recognized by Congress, which they refer to, that are even stronger than the IEEPA tariffs available to me as President of the United States. And in actuality, I was very modest in my ask of other countries and businesses because I wanted to do, and it's very important, I wanted to be very well behaved because I wanted to do anything, I didn't want to do anything that would affect the decision of the court, because I understand the court. I understand how they're very easily swayed. I want to be a good boy.
We wanted to be the good boys, guys. We wanted to be the good guys. We wanted to be Batman, but now we have to be the Joker. Sorry, but that's what you're going to get now. And I've been saying this for a long time, but you know, Trump tries to be Batman, but these criminals, the organized crime syndicate in that movie, The Dark Knight, is just as much the enemy of the Joker as the cops are. And it's because the Joker views the whole system as like a symbiotic thing that works together, where the reason that the crime syndicate thrives is because the cops themselves are part of the crime syndicate, right?
Very effectively utilized tariffs over the past year to make America great again. Our stock market has just recently broken 50.
Okay, so before we go into like he's going to start rattling off some boilerplate stuff, I think. Let's go to some of these clips that are floating around online. Here is one that I recall him saying.
Destroy the trade. I can destroy the trade. I can destroy the country. I'm even allowed to impose a foreign country destroying embargo. I can embargo. I can do anything I want, but I can't charge $1 because that's not what it says. And that's not the way it even reads. I can do anything I want to do to them, but I can't charge any money. I can destroy the trade.
So he's talking about, I believe he's talking about licensing. Yeah, I think what he was talking about was licensing. You can he's like, I'm allowed to issue licenses, but I can't charge a fee for issuing licenses. So I can be like, hey, you have to have a license to bring your goods into our marketplace, but I can't charge them a fee for the license. Then what's the point of the license? You know, this is then it's just like a performative gesture, like a ritual, a bureaucratic ritual. Let's see what he says right here.
I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies. I will sign an.
And that's where the IRS's focus should be. The IRS's focus should be the external forces that are trying to exploit our marketplaces and our people, not only through bad trade practices, but also by infiltrating our government, bribing our officials, buying off our officials, sending in their own agents to become our officials, whatever it may be. All of that needs to be. We need to take all of the powers of the federal government and the U.S. military and turn them inward on itself. All of those powers must be turned inward, and we have to hunt down all of these moles, these rats, these demons, these parasites that have burrowed themselves deep into our government and are pulling the levers of power and controlling the levers of power. And it is so obvious they were doing this. You have to be a retard not to understand that. Autistic people understand that. We have the best, most weaponized autists out there who can recognize the patterns, right? They say, there's a saying online that the world is really a constant battle between the psychopaths and the schizophrenics. And the schizophrenics are the natural enemies of the psychopaths, because the psychopaths are the people who exploit, 90% of the population. And then the schizophrenics are the ones that the autists are the ones who notice the patterns, who can recognize the psychopaths, see them for what they are, and point them out to the rest of society, so the psychopaths can be dealt with. And the psychopaths are absolutely trying to exploit the American people through a system of taxation. That's the tax system is the slave system, whether it's income tax, corporate tax, all taxes are theft, all of them. The question is, what level of theft can we tolerate from ourselves? The income tax system is absolutely a slave system designed to crush the spirit of the American people. And the tariff system that Trump created was designed to supplant that, to remove the need for an income tax. That is why they're not going to allow the tariff system to happen. It's far less about paying a 10% tariff on the goods that they're shipping in. They're willing to do that if they have to. If they can keep the slave system, they would do that. It's the slave system they want. It's the fact that they can twist the knife. They can bend your arm by saying, if you don't pay this fee, if you don't pay this tax, if you don't do XYZ, fill out this form, jump through all the hoops we want you to jump through, we're going to put you in prison, which is against the Constitution. The Bill of Rights prevents them from doing it, and yet they still do it every day because we are ruled by a criminal class of psychopaths. To that point, let's go revisit this article. We read this the other day, but let's just read it again for the hell of it. From the cradle, Beijing moves to contain Mossad's expanding reach in Iran. Israeli intelligence operations inside Iran have alarmed Beijing, which saw them as a new model of intelligence warfare, prompting deeper technological security and strategic cooperation with Tehran. Chinese military experts and intelligence agencies increasingly described Mossad's deep infiltration into Iran as opening a Pandora's box of global security risks. From Beijing's perspective, Israeli and U.S. intelligence operations, particularly those expanding after 2015 and accelerating through 2025 through 2026, marked the evolution of a new battle space. Mossad's ability to embed agents, compromise sensitive databases, disable radar networks, and facilitate precision strikes from inside Iranian territory is interpreted as a shift toward what Chinese analysts call informationized and intelligent warfare. This represents the convergence of cyber sabotage, internal recruitment, technological penetration, and operational coordination, a hybrid model in which intelligence operations hollow out defensive infrastructure before kinetic action begins. For China, the implications extend well beyond Iran. Within Chinese security discourse, Israel's operations in Iran are frequently cited as evidence that intelligence warfare now precedes kinetic engagement. Military expert Fu Quanshao, a former analyst in the Chinese Air Force, characterized Mossad's success in planting agents and disabling Iranian radar and air defense systems from within as a new pattern of intelligence warfare. The June 2025 Israeli strikes on the Islamic Republic, which reportedly faced minimal resistance due to compromised systems, reinforced this assessment. Fu argued that such tactics transcend traditional battlefield engagement. Instead of confronting air defenses externally, Mossad undermined them internally, neutralizing deterrence before aircraft entered contested airspace. Another Chinese military expert, Nian Wei, echoed this concern, emphasizing that the penetration of sensitive Iranian facilities exposed structural weaknesses rather than merely technological gaps. Legal safeguards and routine security protocols, he suggested, are insufficient against intelligence operations that exploit bureaucratic vulnerabilities in internal access points. Professor Li, a Chinese expert on Western Asian affairs, has pointed to Israeli cyber operations targeting research centers and infrastructure as evidence of intelligence warfare functioning as a force multiplier. Unlike conventional attacks, these operations blur the line between espionage and sabotage, complicating retaliation. Tian Wenlin, director of the Institute of Middle Eastern Studies at Renmin University, warned that sustained intelligence incursions could pressure Tehran to accelerate its nuclear capabilities as a defensive countermeasure. Chinese analysts have argued that Mossad's operations revealed structural vulnerabilities within Iranian security and administrative systems. In commentary across Chinese military and policy platforms, the breaches have been cited as evidence of weaknesses in digital infrastructure and internal safeguards. The breaches exposed weaknesses in internal vetting, digital security, and interagency coordination. In Beijing, the episode was read as a warning, a reminder that intelligence warfare can exploit administrative seams as effectively as battlefield vulnerabilities. If a state with extensive security institutions can face such penetration, similar methods could target strategic infrastructure elsewhere, including trade and energy corridors linked to the Belt and Road Initiative. The key takeaway in Chinese policy circles is preventative. Sovereignty in the digital era depends as much on system integrity as on military capability. That last line, what that means is, if you can't guarantee that every person working in your government is actually a loyal patriot working for your government, instead of somebody working for an external agenda, right? Then you're compromised. You can't have a government. That's more dangerous, that's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than a foreign army landing on your beaches and fighting you. At least in that situation, the citizens can pick up arms and go fight the army alongside the military. And you can have a counterinsurgency movement where the citizens and the military of the United States are fighting a common enemy. When you have what they're describing right here, a bureaucratic infiltration, how do you even fight that, right? They're the people who pull the levers of power. They control the police. Sometimes they control the military. They control the courts. How do you fight an enemy like that? You can't. So how do we get out of this, right? I mean, what China is describing right here is in a place, Iran, that ostensibly hates Israel, and yet Israel was able to penetrate so deep into their government that they were able to shut down air defense systems before the planes even reached Iranian airspace. What does that say about a government like America that worships Israel and loves Israel and basically celebrates every Israeli official that walks onto U.S. soil, how pervasive has their infiltration been of our government, right? And I know that like people in our circles like to pull their hair out and they like to, they wring their hands when we talk about this because they're worried about being called racists or anti-Semites or whatever. Guys, we got over that bullshit 10 years ago. I don't know if y'all did, but I certainly did. I don't care about being called a racist. I don't care about being called an anti-Semite. My expectation, if you're Jewish, is that you're an American first. My expectation is that you're going to join our side. You're going to pick up the proverbial firearm on our side and fight the infiltrators, fight the foreign invaders. If you feel a deeper loyalty to them because you share an ethnic heritage or because you share a religion, then you are not one of us. You're not an American. Sorry. It's your choice, though, whether you're an American or not. It's not my choice. You choose whether you're on our side or you're on their side. But it's very clear that there are sides here. And when push comes to shove, there is American interest and there are Israeli interests. And while they like to tell us that those interests align, it's very clear to me that they don't. And you're seeing that right now with this decision to go to war with Iran. Because the whole world is looking at us like, why are you going to do this? Why are you going to be the bad guy? You're going to go pick a fight with Iran that is not in any way posturing that they're going to attack Israel. You're going to go pick a fight with them, cold turkey, unprovoked. And you think you're the good guy. Reality check. Reality check. On that note, let's look at a few things that I think emphasize and reinforce what I'm saying here. And yeah, I'm fired up right now. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so we'll start here. Like this is a video that's worth watching. Here's Mike Huckabee on Fox News. I think this is last night, if I'm not mistaken, either last night or maybe during the day.
Should Israel be expected to even pay one penny to rebuild Gaza at this point?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, if anything, there ought to be reparations to Israel for the extraordinary fight that they have had to conduct to get their hostages back, 252, including many Americans.
Should Israel be expected to even?
And so, question. So they're talking about the border peace thing from yesterday. We're going to talk about the border peace, of course. Mike Huckabee is saying that reparations should be paid to Israel for what they've done to Gaza. They've carpet bombed Gaza. They've ground it into a fine powder. The genocide. I mean, it's widely accepted at this point that we destroy that the IDF has destroyed Gaza. 2 years ago, you were called an anti-Semite. You were called a Hamas sympathizer for saying that the IDF was carpet bombing Gaza. Now it is widely accepted. It got to the point where the Israel shills, the Christian Zionists, were all saying, well, the Gazans can't live in Gaza anymore because we've blown it up so much that it's not safe to live there. So they all should leave, which is like a despicable, demonic thing to say to somebody who just had their like home destroyed. Like you can't live here anymore because we blew your house up. So you should leave and not come back. Okay. So that's now widely accepted. Like Gaza's been destroyed, right? $17 billion, that's a great number. $17 billion was pledged yesterday at the Board of Peace to rebuild Gaza. That's so far. It's 10 billion from the United States. My guess is that'll be from private investors. Trump's not going to bother going to Congress for that because that'll be the fight to get that $10 billion will just be too many headaches. Just like he did with financing the build for the ballroom at the White House, which is all private money. He'll go get private investors to invest in Gaza. They'll get a return on their investment. There'll be an ROI. $7 billion coming from the other countries so far. There's going to be more. But Huckabee suggesting that money should go to Israel instead of Gaza. So is he saying that the money should come from the investors are not going to pledge their money? They're not going to give their money. Like Saudi Arabia, real estate developers in the United States who are looking for places to park money, invest money. They're not just going to hand over cash to Israel. So where does the money come from, Mike? Does it come from Gaza? Like people who are so poor they can't even eat? You're not squeezing any pennies out of them. You're not squeezing any shekels out of Hamas or out of Gaza. So where does the money come from? Probably comes from the American taxpayer is going to be my guess, just like every other dollar that goes into the Israeli coffers. Let's look at this article, because this article is interesting. So we got this Hasbara campaign the other day that came out. Tucker Carlson went to Israel to interview Mike Huckabee and claims he was detained at the airport. Here's the article from 2 days ago, and it looks like I have lost audio. So I'm going to have to reshare my screen. I'm going to reshare it right now, because if I don't do it right now, I will forget to do it before I play the next video. So I'm going to reshare my screen, StreamYard. There it is. Tucker Carlson says he was detained in Israel. The U.S. journalist had arrived in the country to interview American Ambassador Mike Huckabee, a U.S. journalist and podcaster. Tucker Carlson has said he was briefly detained at Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv on Wednesday after taping an interview with the American ambassador to Israel. Carlson, who frequently criticizes U.S. aid to West Jerusalem, told the Daily Mail that Israeli officials took his passport and escorted his executive producer to an interrogation room. Quote, men who identified themselves as airport security took our passports, hauled our executive producer into a side room, and then demanded to know what we spoke to Ambassador Huckabee about, Carlson said. It was bizarre. We're now out of the country, he added. The United States Embassy in Israel denied Carlson's claims, saying he was subjected to routine security checks at the airport. Ambassador Mike Huckabee wrote on X, everyone who comes in and out of Israel, every country for that matter, has passports checked and routinely asked security questions, even me going in and out with diplomatic passport and diplomatic visa. That's not what Tucker was saying. He wasn't saying they checked their visa or their passport. He was saying he was taken into a side room and interrogated. That's totally different. I've traveled in and out of the country. That's not what happens when you travel in and out of the country. You just go through customs. You go through, your border check or whatever. They look at your passport. If they don't have any questions, they stamp it. You move on your way. If they have questions, they pull you aside and they ask you questions. He's saying that's what happened. According to the Jerusalem Post, Carlson did not leave the airport during the visit and conducted the interview with Huckabee inside the terminal. Channel 13 reported that Israeli authorities had considered barring the journalist from entering the country, but ultimately decided against it to avoid a potential diplomatic incident. In the past, Israel has blacklisted U.S. politicians and activists critical of its policies toward the Palestinians. That's not tyrannical at all. In 2019, Israel barred Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib from entering the country. Carlson has criticized Israel's war in Gaza and claimed that U.S. policymakers were acting on behalf of what he described as the Israeli lobby. Jewish rights groups have accused Carlson of promoting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and criticized him for inviting far-right activist Nick Fuentes to his podcast. Yeah, because controlling who people can talk to and who people and what people say is totally freedom and democracy, right? This is the Republican Party getting its mask ripped off by Donald Trump, and I fucking love it. It's fantastic. And so then we have this article. I'm going to play some videos here related to this, but we're going to real quick. Tucker Carlson is a phony, according to ex-Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett has accused the U.S. media figure of talking about but not knowing the country. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett just denounced U.S. talk show host Tucker Carlson for his brief visit to Israel, calling him a chicken shit and a phony. And then it just goes on to kind of give the background of what happened. He says, quote, Tucker Carlson is a chicken shit, he said. Next time he talks about Israel as if he's some expert, just remember this guy's a phony. Okay, so let's pull up. There's a few videos that I want to play real quick. I will pull a video from the Naftali Bennett. This is where Naftali Bennett was speaking from. It was at I don't know, it was at some sort of convention. Here's what he said. So, and it's important to know who this guy is. This guy was he was co-prime minister. They had co-prime ministership. This was the only way they could get into power back in 2021. In 2021, they held an election. For like 4 years, they didn't have a government in Israel because every time they would hold an election, either Bibi Netanyahu would win or this was starting in 2018. either Bibi Netanyahu would win or Benny Gantz would win. And then, the way it works in a parliamentary system is one party wins the most seats. That party is given the first crack at forming a coalition government, meaning they have to get a majority of all the seats in the Knesset. So there are 120 seats, meaning 61 seats have to come to you and say, yes, we support you being prime minister. You're given a few weeks to do that. If you can't negotiate that, I think it's like the second largest party is given a crack at it. They're allowed to come in and they can steal the premiership from you if they're able to leverage enough, if they're able to politic and basically make enough promises to parties to get them to support them. Netanyahu would win an election. He couldn't do it. He couldn't get 61 seats. So they would hold another election, whatever, 3 months later. Benny Gantz would win. He couldn't do it. He couldn't get 61 seats. Back and forth and back. They had 5 elections in like 2 years. Like they had 5 elections. Couldn't form a government. Then COVID happens, and Netanyahu goes to Benny Gantz and says, let's form an emergency government. We're going to form an emergency government. And I will be prime minister and you will be co-prime minister, vice prime minister. It's like a made up, it's basically like alternate prime minister. It's a made up position. Basically is like if Netanyahu gets incapacitated, he becomes prime minister. Benny Gantz says, all right, for the good of the country, we'll do it. They ultimately end up having an election. So that's 2020. So they're operating as under like an emergency government with Netanyahu as the premier, as the prime minister. And then in 2021, they hold another election, and Yair Lapid and this guy, Naftali Bennett, come together, and they're able to form a government after the election where the agreement was Naftali Bennett would be, Yair Lapid would be prime minister for 1 year. Then Naftali Bennett would be prime minister for 1 year, and they would switch back and forth. They were going to be co-prime ministers. That's how it was going to work. So Naftali Bennett was prime minister, Yair Lapid was prime minister from June of 2021 until June of 2022. And then in June of 2022, Naftali Bennett took over. And then between June of 2022 and the end of the year, Netanyahu was able to basically get a new election. So they had an election in November of 2022. And that was when Netanyahu went to the crazies, like the super ultra orthodox radical like zealots who do not support Naftali Bennett, because Naftali Bennett, even though he is an extremist, even though he's a Jewish extremist, he is a Jewish supremacist, he calls for empire, he wants to build a greater Israel, but he also describes himself as a secularist. He says, I'm not a religious nut. I'm not into all the orthodox stuff. I am a pragmatist. I am a secularist. And so he basically thumbs his nose at the religious like fringe in order to get like the moderates, like the centrists, to support him. Right. That doesn't make him any less dangerous from a geopolitical standpoint. It's just him and the religious zealots do not see eye to eye, even though they have overlapping goals. So the religious zealots then join Netanyahu, and that's how he becomes prime minister. They hold another election in November. Netanyahu is able to get these guys to support him in exchange for putting those guys at the top of the government. That's why you have Bezalel Smotrich, Ben Gvir, like all those people are in the security cabinet because of that agreement that Netanyahu makes in order to get rid of Naftali Bennett. Now, they're going to have another election this October, and this guy, Naftali Bennett, is the favorite to become the prime minister next, which is why that whole story that I just told you is why when Chris Paul speculates about our boy Yuhu, I actually think he's right. Like, I think that it is our boy Yuhu. Now, like, what does that mean? Does that mean that Netanyahu is read in on the plan, or does that mean that Trump just prefers Netanyahu because he's easier to control? There's more leverage over him. He's easier to predict. Whereas this guy, I think Naftali Bennett, who probably has less leverage, right? He has less points of leverage on him. He might just tell Trump to go pound sand and do what he wants. He might be harder to get your arms around. So let's listen to this after putting, all that prep work. Let's listen to what he says here.
So we have to build a lot of assets, so they need us a lot. Because I've come to one conclusion, they're not going to love us. The aspiration that the world will love Israel, it's not going to happen. What we need is that our enemies fear us, our friends respect us, and everyone needs us. We tried the love us thing for about 3,000 years, didn't work. So we have to build a lot of assets.
You got to respect the honesty. Like, I mean, he's being pretty straightforward there. He's like, look, instead of changing our behavior to be, socially acceptable, like instead of us conforming to the norms of the world and being polite and being good partners and being cooperative, winning friends, as they say, right? Instead of winning friends, we're just going to go the other route. We're just going to become the villain. Like, that's fine. You can hate us all you want, but you're going to fear us, because we're going to blow you up with pagers. We're going to bomb you in your homes. We're going to infiltrate your government. We're going to do whatever we can to get to you if you oppose us. This is tyranny on, like, full display. Full display. He's telling you what the plan is. Like, you are going to fear us, because if you oppose us, we will come for you no matter where you are. And if you support this, I don't know how you can call yourself an American. I don't know how you can call yourself MAGA. You're certainly not America first. That's for sure. You're Israel first. Now, let's go back to Tucker, because what ends up happening is that Tucker is, there is this video that's put out. Tucker makes these claims that he was detained. And of course, the U.S. Embassy in Israel, which is the State Department in Israel, State Department is irredeemable. State Department is the CIA. The State Department is a rat's nest of traitors, right? And you have to imagine, of all the places, Israel is probably one of the worst in terms of just like demons working there. I would imagine that all the people who work in the embassy in Jerusalem are probably the worst of the worst in terms of like their alignment. And remember, we have multiple interviews now that Tucker and others have conducted with Christian leaders in the West Bank and in Israel who have said that the State Department does not reach out to them. The embassy in Israel does not reach out to them. They want nothing to do with the Christians in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. So this is what ends up getting put out. This video, and it's everywhere. I mean, everyone's posting this video. Okay, so the video is supposed to show like Tucker hugging a guy. Just Tucker hugging a guy at the airport and posing for a picture. This is obviously security footage, right? And so he takes a picture with this guy. And so the copy that everyone's putting out when they put this video out, like this is this random person, Fabian, whoever this is, the quote unquote bizarre treatment Tucker Carlson reported in Israel looks a lot like a warm welcome. New footage shows him hugging airport staff and smiling, directly contradicting his claims of seized passports and nefarious detentions. Why the dramatization? So Tucker went ahead and put a video out to address this. And here's the video.
The Israelis apparently went, probably with the help of Mike Huckabee, went to the surveillance tape inside the diplomatic terminal and pulled some clip. And they're, of course, getting all their little bots online to promote it, of me with my arm around somebody to show that actually I'm lying about what happened. That person was our driver who drove us from the plane to the terminal, a short drive. Very nice guy, good guy, Israeli guy. And right when we arrived, and he said, "Could I get a picture?" Of course. He's a nice man. So I just put my arm around him, took a picture. That's what that is. That was before the interview. It was before our producers were hassled by the thugs and asked ridiculous questions. It was before any of this happened. So that's just another installment of the propaganda war. Thought we'd give you the backstory on that.
Yeah. So again, like the timeline here that's being presented here. Tucker lands in the plane, and anyone who's been at like a smaller airport understands that like you go to a big airport and you walk directly, you get on a jet bridge. You walk directly from the building onto the plane via a jet bridge. But a lot of the smaller airports don't have jet bridges. So, or if you're flying in a smaller plane, there's no jet bridge. So you land on the runway, you taxi to the terminal, you then step off the plane onto the asphalt, you get into a bus or a car or whatever. If you don't walk, if you can't walk directly into the terminal, in this case, he says they get into a car with a driver, the driver drives them to the terminal, they get out of the car, they walk into the building, maybe they have to go through security, customs, whatever. Then they do the interview with Mike Huckabee. So he's saying that the driver drove them to the building, walks into the building with them. That was the moment that you just watched, was before they're going through like customs and all that. He just takes a picture of the driver, goes through customs, shows his passport, goes in, does the interview with Mike Huckabee, leaves. And as he's leaving and showing the passport to get back on the plane to come back to the US, that's when they grab him and say, do the interrogation. So the video that they're putting out, that all of the pro-Israel bots are saying, this is proof that Tucker's a liar. That happened hours before the interrogation, because you would imagine that the conversation with Mike Huckabee is probably a few hours long, plus like the, process of walking over to meet him and coming back. So this is like vicious information warfare, disinformation warfare. And yeah, I'm inclined to believe Tucker here, because I don't see what his agenda would be in lying. I mean, I understand that him and Israel are at odds with one another, but the behavior from the Israeli government and their network of liars is consistent with how they behave every other time they're accused of wrongdoing. So let's now go to Mike Huckabee once again, explaining why he met with a convicted traitor by the name of Jonathan Pollard, who was serving a life sentence in U.S. prison because he was a naval intelligence officer who stole 10,000 documents in the 80s and gave them to the Mossad. He was arrested in the 80s. He wasn't even tried. He pled guilty to everything. He said, I'm guilty. Yeah, I did everything. 100% guilty. Okay. Got a life sentence. Obama pardons this guy in 2015. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this. So Obama pardons Jonathan Pollard in 2018. Which, by the way, guys, I thought Obama hated Israel. I thought Obama was a Muslim, right? That's a disinformation campaign. But he pardons Jonathan Pollard. He released him from prison. However, he stipulates that he's on a 5-year parole where he's not allowed to leave the country for 5 years. So he's stuck in America for 5 years. Okay. So in 2020, Trump's last year in office, Pollard's parole comes up and it's not renewed. So meaning that all of the restrictions on his travel are lifted. So then he gets on a plane that is chartered by Sheldon Miriam Adelson, that's Trump's top donor, and the private plane flies Pollard from the United States to Israel and to the Ben Gurion airport, same airport Tucker went to, and Netanyahu is standing there on the runway waiting for him to greet him when he arrives. This is one of the greatest traitors in U.S. history, far worse of a traitor than Benedict Arnold, in my opinion, in terms of like the damage he did to, 10,000 documents handed over to the Mossad, including like a signal intelligence manual that explains exactly how this, like our military intelligence and CIA collect signal intelligence. So now they know exactly how to figure out what our groups are doing. Mike Huckabee met with this guy in secret, didn't put it on his official calendar back in July. This was exposed a few months later when somebody figured out that this happened and he was asked about it. This is his response to it. And I think this is actually by Tucker.
I met Jonathan Pollard 2 times. Once I was making a speech in Jerusalem. This has been a few years ago. His wife was still alive at the time, and he was there. And someone introduced me to him and his wife. I said hello to them. That was it. Hi. Nice to meet Esther, his wife. And that was it. I went and made my speech and I left. Later, his wife passed away here in Israel. And I sent him a note and just said, I'm sorry to hear about your wife. I remember meeting her at the hotel and sorry to hear it. He then asked, could he come and see me? He wanted to come and thank me for being kind to him. He came to the embassy. I think we met for maybe 30 minutes. We had a nice, pleasant visit. the funny thing was the New York Times reported that it was a secret meeting. Tucker, if you've ever been to the U.S. Embassy, you would know there's no such thing as a secret meeting at the U.S. Embassy.
Sure.
There are cameras everywhere. You walk through Marines, you walk through security, you walk through the front office, and there's a dozen or more people that are going to check you out when you come. And before you get there, you're going to have to give us your passport information. You're going to have to be vetted and screened and all of this stuff. So the idea that it was secret was ludicrous. The whole idea is, look, Jonathan Pollard did something that was terribly wrong.
I'm going to let him finish before I do. The secret meeting part of it was the fact that it wasn't on his official calendar. That was what the report was, and which is why nobody reported it in July when the meeting happened. This wasn't reported on, I think, and I'm pulling up the article right now. I think it was in September that this report came out, if I'm not mistaken. Here it is. Right here. November, excuse me. November. So this wasn't reported on until November 20th. White House was unaware U.S. ambassador to Israel met with a convicted spy. It says the White House was unaware of a meeting between U.S. ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee and Jonathan Pollard, the former U.S. Navy analyst who spent 3 decades in prison for spying for Israel. Spokeswoman Caroline Levitt said on Thursday. The New York Times reported on Thursday that Huckabee met Pollard in July at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. The meeting was kept off Huckabee's official schedule and caught U.S. officials by surprise, but the Times reported. Levitt told reporters that although the administration had no advanced knowledge of the encounter, quote, the president stands by our ambassador, Mike Huckabee, and all that he is doing for the United States and Israel. Says Pollard, in an interview with an Israeli news channel, said the meeting with Huckabee took place at his request. Quote, I had originally requested the interview for a very personal reason, he said to Israel's I-24 News. I wanted to express my sincere appreciation for all the efforts that he had expanded on my behalf when I was in prison. It says Huckabee, while running for the Republican presidential nomination in 2011, advocated for Pollard's release. Pollard was convicted in 1987 and sentenced to life, the harshest punishment ever for spying for an ally. For passing highly classified U.S. material to Israel, he served 30 years before being paroled in 2015. So that's Obama. All of the Hasbara Israeli disinformation agents online have been saying for years now, because this story's been out there for years, that it was Trump that pardoned him in 2020. But there's the truth right there. He served 30 years before being paroled in 2015 by Obama. They don't say by Obama, but it was Obama. And then moving to Israel in 2020. That was after his 5-year parole expired and it wasn't renewed by the State Department. The case stressed U.S.-Israeli relations, and many in the U.S. intelligence community still view his case as one of the most damaging breaches of classified information in U.S. history, while some in Israel regard him as a hero. Netanyahu certainly does, because he met him on the tarmac and gave him a big hug. And there's a video, I think I played it back in November when this all broke, of Pollard getting on the ground and kissing the ground when he arrived in Israel. This guy was born and raised in New York City. He is an American citizen who later was given his Israeli citizenship under the right of return law in Israel, saying anyone who's Jewish automatically gets their Israeli citizenship. And he chose to betray his homeland for Israel. And you cannot compare this guy, by the way, to what's his name? The NSA guy, who I'm not sure if he's any better, like in terms of like, I'm the jury's out a little bit on him. Snowden, on whether or not Snowden was good or bad. Snowden seems like he could have been an op. It seems like it might have been an op, the whole thing. But at the very least, what you can say about Snowden is that he was exposing to the public spyware stuff. Like, he was exposing to the public that the U.S. intelligence community was spying on the American people. That's what he was exposing. So you can at least give him that. This guy, Pollard, was not exposing any of that. He was giving a foreign government information, highly classified information about how U.S. intelligence operations happen. That, like, I don't know if it gets any worse than that. I mean, I'm sure it does, but that's a pretty severe example of treason, I would say. And he wasn't even given the death penalty. He was just allowed to go back and live in Israel. And it was Mike Huckabee who advocated for his release, which is why one of the many reasons why I think the decision to put Huckabee in the position that he's in right now by Trump was completely strategic And it was done exactly for this reason, for what's unfolding right now, is that Trump created this dialectic. He totally created this dialectic between Tucker and Mike Huckabee. Remember, Fuentes came to Mar-a-Lago back in 2022 with Kanye West. I'm not shilling for Fuentes. I'm saying that Trump let Fuentes come to Mar-a-Lago and had dinner with him. I don't know if that was Trump's idea or if Kanye just pulled a fast one on him, but he let him in the building, let the guy in the building. He sat down and had dinner with him. And then when Tucker has him on his podcast for an interview, Trump is asked about it. Here's what Trump said about that. It was right here. I'm trying to grab it from the correct news brief. I swear I thought I put that in the Monday news brief. Wasn't that one? And maybe it was last week's. Here it is. Yep. Okay, so this is what Trump said about Tucker.
To the formula, yeah.
Mr. President, Tucker Carlson recently had a friendly interview with anti-Semite Nick Fuentes. Tucker Carlson. What role do you think Tucker Carlson should play in the Republican Party and the conservative movement going forward?
Well, I found him to be good. I mean, he said good things about me over the years. I think he's good. We've had some good interviews. I did an interview with him. We had 300 million hits. You know that. Look, I can't tell him. Will you let me finish my statement? You are the worst. You're with Bloomberg, right? You are the worst. I don't know why they even have you.
Keck.
We've had some great interviews with Tucker Carlson, but you can't tell him who to interview. I mean, if he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it, get the word out. Let him, people have to decide. Ultimately, people have to decide.
You got to decide for yourself. Because you remember years ago when the left was canceling people, this is 10 years ago. 10 years, guys. We've been doing this for 10 years now. People were like, well, you can't tell people what they can and can't consume, or who they can and can't listen for. That was the right wing saying that, right? MAGA saying that. Now all of a sudden we're pro censorship because the specific topic hurts our feelings. It's like, wow, we are just huge pussies, apparently. Huge pussies. All right, let's go to... I need to get the ads ready for the ad break. I don't think I know if I have them all uploaded, but I wanted to play this one. This video is unbelievable.
What's the best outcome you can see coming from this?
Silence.
Silence.
Yeah.
So this is an interview for the Jerusalem Post talking about Tucker and like the problems that he's creating by interviewing all these Christian leaders and potentially Mike Huckabee, which hasn't been released yet as far as I know. Maybe it has. I haven't been really checking for it, but I'm just waiting for it to come out.
That's it. Let's just stop fighting about Israel. That's the best outcome. Again, there's no illusion that, but what I see is
because
Tucker has control of Americans under 30.
Okay.
It's frightening.
Very.
He really, my kids' high schools, they love him. Listening to him, love him. So we are not going to change his opinion, but it would be great to stop talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's realistically, as a cynical journalist and human being, that's what we want to happen. Let's just move on to another topic.
I want to be
the left again.
Let's talk about the left. Let's go own the libs, guys. I mean, in the same breath, this woman calls herself a journalist as she's saying, we should shut down this conversation. Shut it down, guys. Shut down the conversation. Is she trying to be the meme? Is she trying to be like the rabbi with the walkie-talkie meme? I think she is. I think she is. And the last thing I will play this before we do the ad break. The last thing I wanted to play was, this is a little longer, but I think the whole thing is worth watching because again, every time I talk about this subject, I get inundated with messages. A lot of them are supportive, I will say that, but and I kind of just ignore all of them because it's a lot of them are pretty negative, and I just don't have time to argue with people online. But I think this is very damning. Like this exchange that Tucker has with this specific Christian pastor is a pretty damning example of the issue, like the lies. So let's just watch this, and then we'll do the ad break.
Is meaningless.
Well,
what's its strategic importance other than that? Are there trade routes that go through it? Do they have a ton of oil we need? Like, what is this? You're like, well, we have to be more closely allied with Israel than any other country. It's like, well, why? And no one can answer you. Well, because they're threatened. Well, so are a lot of countries. They're not alone in having neighbors that don't like them. But why is that my problem?
The people who don't like them, the Muslims, surrounding Muslim countries, are also people who don't like us. And Muslims.
Who specifically? Which government are you talking about?
Okay, that's the government of Dearborn, Michigan.
You know, a lot of the Muslims in Dearborn are Christian.
Well,
I mean, a lot of the Arabs in Michigan are Christian. So just like in point of fact, and I'm okay with them because they're fellow Christians, even though, you know, they look different. But I rate that against the actual threats.
Well, think of it this way. I've seen the.
So that guy just like he said first. He says, "Well, you know the Muslims." This guy says Muslims. Whenever they pronounce it like Muslims, you know that you're going to get a bunch of like a spoonful of bullshit after that. The Muslim governments around Israel are not friendly to Israel are also not friendly to us. And Tucker says, well, "Which governments you talking about?" He says, "Dearborn, Michigan." I'm sorry, is Dearborn? Do I need to pull the map out? Is Dearborn, Michigan, around Israel? Like, is this guy retarded? Yes, he is. But let's just allow him to continue to dig the hole a little deeper.
England, and currently every major city in England is governed. It has a Muslim mayor. Their immigration policy has been disastrous, like ours. Someone could argue, as I would, that the Muslims who are threatening Israel are Muslims who are threatening us. Islam is a greater threat than the Jews.
Yeah, is the problem with the Muslims of Europe that they're too Muslim or that they're criminals?
Well,
I mean,
that's the same thing.
Yeah, it's not though, actually, and it's not. And
no, the
Muslim. Let me ask you this,
well,
and I'm totally not for Islam. Okay,
yeah,
I'm a Christian. Why are there twice as many Christians living in Qatar as there are in Israel? Do you think?
Twice as many Christians in Qatar as
in Qatar. Yeah, the Islamist slave state that we hear so much about. But there are twice as many Christians living there as in Israel, and they can leave if they want. They came freely, but there are twice as many in Qatar. Why do you think that is?
Can they build churches?
Yeah, actually, the state gave them the land for their churches. But why is that? If what you're saying is true, because it's not true, actually. The reality that you experience when you get
hey, let's just take a quick side quest and fact check Tucker here. I asked the AI, are there twice as many Christians living in Qatar as Israel? And the answer is yes. There are approximately twice as many Christians living in Qatar as in Israel based on population estimates. Around 400,000 Christians, primarily temporary migrant workers from countries like India, the Philippines, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. They make up about 13 to 14% of the total population of 3 million people. So 400,000 Christians in Qatar. There are about 188,000 Christians in Israel. That's a pretty fascinating statistic that you never hear the Christian Zionist pastors talk about. So I thought that was interesting. Let's go back and finish this this segment, and then we'll pivot away.
The American media biosphere is so different, the reality, from what you're describing. The second question I want to ask is, how do we get all these Muslims here after 9/11? They all came after 9/11.
Yeah.
Who encouraged that exactly? Who encouraged that? And it's a lot of the same people who are now encouraging us to hate Muslims. ADL.
Oh, ADL.
Completely for that. They encourage that. So what is that? But I know that the same people who are like, Islam is the problem, are the same people who brought us all these Muslims here.
Right, because
I feel like I'm being played a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The same people crying anti-Semitism constantly, telling me I can't have free speech rights because there's anti-Semitism, are the same people telling us that we have to hate Muslims because they're Muslim. Well, and how is hating Muslims better than hating Jews?
Yeah, it's not.
Exactly.
If you hate Muslims because they're Muslim, that's
the same as hating Jews because they're.
I want to point out that he literally just said a few minutes ago when Tucker said, are they a problem in England because they're criminals or because they're Muslims? And the guy says same thing. And he says, the Quran, they're all criminals. All the Muslims are criminals. So he obviously hates the Muslims, yes. And now he's sitting there acting like hating Muslims is bad. This guy is an absolute grade A, military grade moron.
Jewish.
Yeah, correct.
I'm out.
But if you are opposed to Muslims who have read the Quran, which I've done a couple times, I read through the Quran,
Yeah.
and the Muslim Brotherhood, the people, the jihadis,
Right.
are not twisting the Quran.
I'm sure. I wouldn't know.
They are being consistent with it, and I see them as a far greater threat to the West than the state of Israel is. And so protecting Israel from Muslims, you could argue, is a roundabout way of protecting. It's a proxy.
How's that work for us?
It's a
So
proxy
we
war.
went to war in Iraq in March of 2003 at the behest of Israel, flat out. Bibi said it. Glad you're doing it. And I don't know, there's no debate about that. And then in the years since, we've gotten millions of Muslims in the United States, millions since the Iraq War.
Yeah.
So how's that program worked out for us? We didn't have any Muslims in the United States when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And as our support for Israel has become more and more fanatical, which it is, it's fanatical, can't even discuss it, anti-Semite, we've gotten more Muslims. So I don't think this works the way that we think it does.
Right. I think that the whole system at the top is demented.
Yeah, you think?
But that doesn't change the facts on the ground. We've got the problem that we have in Dearborn is a problem that London has and a bunch of other UK cities have.
I would argue that because we are involved militarily and on many other levels in the Middle East, at the behest of Israel, we're there because of Israel. We have an air base in Qatar because of Israel. We've all these troops there because of Israel. We have a lot of Muslims.
We might have an air base in Idaho, Qatari, if the deal goes through.
Why?
Again, this guy is pushing disinformation bullshit. There's no air base in Idaho for the Qataris. There is a detachment at an existing U.S. Air Force base where we train Qatari pilots to fly F-15s. That is, or whichever plane it is that they're going to be trained on. That is a program that we do with every single country that we sell planes to. Whenever we sell planes to a country, we train them on how to maintain the planes, on how to work on them, and on how to fly them. And we do that here on U.S. soil. Like, this is utter retardation. Laura Loomer walked into the same rake, a year ago, and this was announced with Hegseth. She stepped right on that rake, and it smacked her right in her face. It's not a Qatari airbase. It is a hangar at an existing airbase, a U.S. airbase, where they train Qatari pilots to fly planes. We also do it for India. We do it for Saudi Arabia. We do it for Turkey. We do it for every single country we sell planes to. Retarded. This guy is a moron. God.
Is that because Israel bombed Doha because they were doing we were doing a peace negotiation with Hamas? Why is that our job? Why is any of this our job? We've invaded the world and then we've imported the world. It happened to Britain. That's why they got immigration in the 60s, because their empire was coming down. And they're like, oh, you're from Barbados, you're from Nigeria, those were British colonies, you move here.
Right.
And we're doing the same thing. So how about we don't have actual interests in the Middle East other than oil. Let's just pull back, because this is destroying our country, what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza, which is totally indefensible as far as I'm concerned. How about let the kids leave? No. How about let food in? No. You have the most precise munitions in the world, but you're blowing up Christian churches and schools and hospitals. Tell me why you're doing that. What the Israeli government is doing in Gaza is terrorism and unconscionable. No one denies it. Tens of thousands of children.
So right there, he says it's unconscionable. He recognizes that, yes, they are bombing churches in Gaza, and yes, it is unconscionable. Some of the oldest churches in the world, by the way, Christian Zionists out there who are listening, the oldest churches in the world being bombed in Gaza multiple times.
And have been killed in Gaza. It's just an absolute fact. I visited some of their surviving siblings last week, and all of a sudden people are like, it doesn't matter if the kids get killed, or they blow up 2 churches in Gaza.
Were there tunnels underneath
They
them?
never claimed there were tunnels underneath.
No, I'm just asking.
This guy literally just said, well, wait a minute, were there tunnels underneath them? Were there tunnels under the churches? Maybe we should be blowing them up then. This guy is literally possessed by a demon, I think. He's either just like an idiot or he's possessed by a demon, but in either case, I think he is a terrible representative for Christian Zionists. It's very, very damning. This is a devastating interview for that entire ideology.
It's like insane. And by the way, if there were tunnels underneath, sorry, you still can't blow up a Christian church when all your money's coming from a majority Christian country. Sorry, there are limits on what you can do.
Okay.
Tough luck. Anybody who's out there trying to squelch criticism of Israel, ask, is it like regrettable, sad, maybe even immoral to kill someone, a child who did nothing wrong? And if you can't say that, then we're just operating from different worlds. I'm sorry. Why can't you say that? Why is that so threatening to say, probably not a good idea to kill a child? They will not say that, and they much less apologize for it. Why bomb churches in Gaza? Tell me. You've got the capacity to put bombs in people's pagers, but you accidentally hit 2 churches? Not an accident. How about you ask for our forgiveness? Israel has not allowed food aid into 2 million people. There's no infrastructure whatsoever. There's no business. They flattened 70% of it. We know that from satellite photos. And so what is that? Their entire country is dependent on US taxpayer dollars. There would be no wars fought by Israel alone because it's got 9 million people and no resources. They have a reserve military. They don't have enough people. A huge chunk of their country doesn't work, but no one can admit it. They all have to lie about everything. If Israel does stuff that I despise, my view is I don't want to pay for that. Okay.
Right.
Get out of my country. Stop trying to censor me. Go do your own thing in your own Eastern country, which is not Western. Sorry.
The West Bank, the conflict there is not caused by Israel holding the West Bank. Israel holds the West Bank because of the conflict.
What?
So when Israel was formed, the next day or whatever it was, they were invaded. So a lot of what the Israel has.
Well, the West Bank was taken by Israel in 1967 from Jordan.
Right.
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 So Israel proper, the West Bank.
Okay, so wait, wow, this guy's so stupid. He says that Israel was formed, then the next day they were invaded. Israel was formed in 1947 by a decree by the UN, the Palestinian partition plan, which led to the Nakba, which is the catastrophe in Arabic. And what that was Israeli settlers, the colonists, running through Palestine, which was now considered Israel, with guns and clearing out neighborhoods that still had majority Palestinians in them. Something like 300,000 people driven out of their homes at gunpoint in a matter of days. And most of them went and lived in Jordan or lived in the West Bank. All right. And then Tucker says, wait a minute. The West Bank, though, wasn't part of the original Palestinian partition plan, Palestine partition plan. That was taken in 1967 in the 6-Day War by the IDF. The guy said, right. Yes. Okay. So this guy literally doesn't even have the facts when he makes arguments here.
Is what we used to call an occupied territory. Now they have a new name for it. A lot of Israelis used to say, like, we've got Gaza, we said Golan Heights, and we've got what we call the West Bank. And those are what we call the occupied territories. They're majority Arab, majority Muslim Arab, though tons of Christians, fewer now. But yeah, what do you do with that? You can't call yourself a democracy if they don't have full citizenship, but you can't give them full citizenship because then they'll vote you out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely retarded. It's amazing. I recognize that guy. I forget his name. He's a Christian pastor, but he's also, I guess, some sort of a politician from Dearborn, Michigan. The guy is a moron of biblical proportion. Biblical proportion. Should be illegal to be that stupid. All right, so let's go to a break. We're going to be back in a minute. This is Geopolitics with Ghosts.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
But this is all I've been drinking since last Friday. Don't drink coffee anymore, and I feel more focused. Since I've been taking it, it's been amazing. And so I would encourage you guys to try it out. This might be my new favorite thing.
Thinking and no more stubborn belly fat. Imagine waking up ready to crush the day and shed a few stubborn pounds without crazy dieting. If you want to feel great and support the show, head to badlandshealth.com and lock in $70 off today in all future orders, plus a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's badlandshealth.com. Trust me, your future self will thank you. It's officially a new era for gold and silver. Gold has broken $5,000 an ounce, and silver has surged past $100 in 2025 alone. Gold jumped $64 while silver skyrocketed 64%, while silver skyrocketed 150%. And with political and economic uncertainty ahead, 2026 could bring even bigger moves. After such a historic run, a pullback is normal. Metals move fast. Some consolidation is expected, but top analysts are calling for even higher prices. We've seen the first bank failure of 2026 with regulators shutting down the Metropolitan Capital Bank and Trust in Chicago. Could more follow? It's no surprise Americans are pulling money from the bank and turning to proven protection of gold and silver. Big news, Goldco is celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a limited times bonus. Get up to 10% free gold or silver plus free storage and free home safe and a free home safe with qualifying cash back. This offer won't last, so act now. We are seeing the early signs of another the early signs of another 2008 style crash? Don't wait for the next shoe to drop. Protect your wealth with precious metals, because in uncertain times, gold and silver shine brightest. Visit badlandsgold.com today for your free 2026 gold and silver kit and bonus buy. That's badlandsgold.com. Fellas, quick question. Is your beard intentional or is it just happening to your face? If it's dry, crunchy, or doing whatever it wants, that's not rugged, that's neglect. Soft Disclosure Beard Oil fixes that. A few drops softens the hair, conditions the skin underneath, and takes your beard from chaotic to dialed in. No grease, no overpowering fake scent, just clean ingredients that actually work. And now we have the upgrade, the new boar bristle brush engraved with the Soft Disclosure logo and ethically imported and finished right here in the USA. For real bristles, real control. It distributes oil evenly, trains the beard, and makes you look like you meant to grow it that way. Here's the move. When you order the beard oil, you can add the brush for 25% off. Visit softdisclosure.com to level up your beard game. That is softdisclosure.com. All right, we are back. Hour 2 of Geopolitics with Ghost. Sorry, that was kind of a clumsy ad break there. StreamYard is just doing StreamYard things, and I've lost the ability to scroll up and down in my like little side control panel, which means I have to like zoom out 300% so everything's like this big in order to like click the button at the bottom. But it's technical stuff. But StreamYard continues to be a massive disappointment. And I wonder how much longer I will continue to use this because this is just kind of a shit show. Sorry about that, though. We are back. Second hour of Geopolitics with Ghost, February 20th, 2026. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. I'm Badlands Media, a.k.a. the ghost of Base Patrick Henry. All right, so let's shift gears here from talking about the kind of farcical nature of the Israeli Hasbara campaign, the failing Hasbara campaign, PR campaign. And let's talk about the Board of Peace. So we had a meeting yesterday, which was very overlooked. The first meeting of the Board of Peace. I have a good video here that I thought was pretty funny. I put it in the news brief. And that would be this one. The quality on this one's kind of bad. They're all like awkwardly posing for their pictures, and Trump just kind of takes over. Trump is doing Trump stuff. All right, so I have a list of all the countries that attended this. As I had mentioned before, $17 billion were pledged so far. $10 million from Trump himself. He said that that'll come from the U.S. My guess is private investors, real estate developers, that sort of thing. People who understand real estate deals and are looking to get a return on their investment. And then $7 billion so far from various countries that are involved in the Board of Peace. As more countries join, more money will come in, and I'm sure we'll get more money from these countries that have already pledged it. Here is the list of countries that were in attendance yesterday: Albania, Argentina, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Belarus, Bulgaria, Egypt, Hungary, Indonesia, Israel, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Kosovo, Mongolia, Morocco, Pakistan, Paraguay, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, USA, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. And what you'll notice from this list is that it's the majority of the list so far are Muslim countries. And that makes sense because Gaza is obviously a Muslim majority region, whatever you want to call it. And so if it's going to be governed by a entity, that entity should be mostly Muslims. That would make the most sense, especially given the history of the conflict there. So yeah, $17 billion, 17, interesting number, says the board plans to, well, I mean, this is just my take. And it looks like they cut the lost audio again. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing because, man, it's just can't win anything today. 32,000 soldiers or personnel are going to be deployed as part of this ISF, the International Stabilization Force. They're going to come from Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania. 12,000 of them will be police. 20,000 of them will be troops. They are going to be receiving training and support from Egypt and Jordan, which of course are like the two Muslim countries that share a border with Gaza. or I'm sorry, with Palestine. Gaza shares a border with Egypt. West Bank shares a border with Jordan. Turkey has also volunteered soldiers and police, and that specific demographic, Trump has said he wants represented in the ISF. Netanyahu and the Israelis have all said, over our dead bodies, will we have Turkish troops on the ground in Gaza? I also suspect this is why Naftali Bennett a few days ago identified Turkey and Qatar, or Turkey is the next Iran. He said Turkey's the next Iran, and we should really treat them that way. It's no surprise. So they're going to build a base in southern Gaza that'll house 5,000 personnel. And it says, as President Trump gives Iran a deadline of 10 days to consider his peace deal, while posturing him to start a massive war in Iran by sending planes and other equipment in the region, in the biggest military buildup since the Iraq War of 2003. So there's been all these OSINT guys online. Like, we can kind of talk about these things side by side. The peace board meeting along with the Iran scare, because I think it's interesting that these things are happening right side by side, because they obviously contradict one another. The critics are pointing out the contradictions. I don't think those comparisons are unjust. I think they're actually spot on, and it should be signal. Like, if Trump's hosting the Board of Peace to make peace in the Middle East, why would he start another war with the most powerful military in the Middle East? It just doesn't make any sense. Well, this is interesting. I'm just seeing this clip as I pull up something else that I wanted to talk about. I'm seeing a few clips from that presser that Trump did earlier. Before we get there, let's talk about the thing I actually wanted to talk about, which was this. I haven't seen proof of this yet. Let me just ask real quick. I want to go to the ChatGPT and say, have we gotten verification yet? Because the rumor that's swirling around is that Egypt and Iran have restored diplomatic ties. And so this is being shared by DD Geopolitics. Let me share my screen. It says, and they're pretty good. Like, I mean, they're a little like they've been infected over the past year or so with TDS, so they do suffer from a little bit of TDS. I will say that about them, but for the most part, like, the information they relay tends to be accurate. So we'll see if this is true. I haven't seen it anywhere yet. I have seen it reported by certain people, but yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the response from ChatGPT, and yeah, the sources it's giving me are all kind of the same sources. It's like online sources. So we'll see. But the post here says Iran and Egypt have agreed to restore full diplomatic ties and open embassies in each other's capitals. The timing of this cannot be overstated. As the U.S. positions 2 carrier strike groups for a potential strike on Iran, Tehran just secured a diplomatic relationship with the most populous Arab nation and a key U.S. ally that hosts American military assets. Iran and Egypt severed ties in 1980 after the Islamic Revolution. So again, like, somebody here asked, is this true? And ask Grok, and Grok says there's no confirmation of this anywhere as of February 20th. So I have not seen this confirmed, but it wouldn't surprise me that this is actually true. I think that is really interesting. And again, if we go look at the map, let's pull up the map. We already looked at the security architecture in the region. We've looked at before, I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, how Saudi Arabia is like the linchpin that holds everything together, holds all these agreements together. So here is the Middle East. And so we did the little diagram where we showed, like, Pakistan is kind of like the eastern wall, Turkey's the western wall, Egypt is like the wall between Africa and the Middle East. And Saudi Arabia is the linchpin that kind of holds it all together, because everyone has a relationship with Saudi Arabia. And that this represents kind of a geopolitical security architecture where you're not establishing a caliphate, you're not establishing like a one single centralized government over the Middle East. This is like multilateral, multipolar region of responsibility pivot, right? Where all these countries work together, common ground. They're not fighting with one another. They're working together to build up their build themselves up, reach prosperity. The first thing you got to do before you can do prosperity is you got to stabilize. In order to stabilize, you got to have security. So having these security agreements between Turkey and Egypt, having a security agreement between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, those are all things you want to see. The one that we haven't gotten yet is Iran with one of these Arab countries. Iran has begun to normalize relationships with like Saudi Arabia, but we need to see, like, if we saw Iran and Egypt, like if you can see here, like Iran with the Persian Gulf normalizing with Egypt, which is the Mediterranean and Red Sea, would be a major step towards like putting the security architecture on solid footing. And Egypt, of course, has historic ties to Britain, to the United States, and more recently to Saudi Arabia, with Saudi Arabia like Sisi and MBS being pretty tight. So I hope this is true, because that'll be a very, very strong signal of this architecture coming to fruition. And obviously, if Egypt and Iran are normalizing and they're not, if they're normalizing and maybe even engaging with security agreements, we're not going to attack Iran if they're normalizing with Egypt. So this is the last thing that the Zionists want to see happen. The Christian Zionists do not want to see Iran normalize with Egypt or Saudi or any of them. But if you are a peacemaker, if you are a son of God who actually wants there to be world peace, and you aren't just wearing that as a convenient political motto, and really you actually want to see bloodshed and warfare, which many Christian Zionists apparently do, then this is what you want. You want to see these countries normalize, and you want to see them make peace. So I hope this is actually happening. But again, we don't have confirmation of it. I've only seen certain accounts promote it, and the accounts may not be perfect in terms of their track record, because they do have TDS. But generally speaking, I see them post good information. So we'll see if that actually happens. Real quick, let me pull up Arab news and just see if that's been reported. Nope, don't see anything about Egypt. Okay. So we did get FIFA. Like, FIFA has been playing this really weird role. We can look at that in like Trump's, like, this whole geopolitical conversation. FIFA is kind of playing this overrepresented role, because I mean, it's a soccer league, right? At the end of the day, that's what FIFA is. It's a soccer league. But to its credit, the whole world plays soccer. It's like the one sport that the whole world plays, team sport. And it's very popular throughout like the third world and even like the developed world and the first world. But it's kind of like that one sport that can bring everybody together. Like, the world doesn't all play football. Some of them play basketball, but not everybody. But they all play soccer. And FIFA was also described as like the most corrupt organization in the world a couple of years ago. In hindsight, I wonder if that's because of their relationship with Qatar and like their decision to give Qatar the World Cup in 2022. Of which Pam Bondi and a bunch of people now in the Trump administration were like working for Qatar to facilitate that, and during the World Cup. But here it says FIFA and the Board of Peace to support Gaza reconstruction through football. FIFA and the Board of Peace signed a partnership agreement on Thursday to attract investment from global leaders and institutions for sustainable development in conflict affected regions through football. The Board of Peace, established under U.S. President Donald Trump, held its first meeting focused on Gaza's reconstruction fund aimed at rebuilding the territory once Hamas disarms, the disarmament of Hamas militants and accompanying withdrawal of Israeli troops. The size of the reconstruction fund and the flow of humanitarian aid to the war-torn population are expected to pose significant challenges to the board's effectiveness in the coming months. The FIFA collaboration plan includes building 50 mini pitches near schools and residential areas in Gaza, 5 full-size pitches across multiple districts, a state-of-the-art FIFA academy, and a new 20,000-seat national stadium, Trump said FIFA will raise $75 million for football-related projects in Gaza. Quote, today, FIFA and the Board of Peace have signed a landmark partnership agreement that will foster investment into football for the purpose of helping to the recovery process in post-conflict areas, FIFA President Gianni Infantino said in the statement. Together with support of the Board of Peace, FIFA will drive this partnership, which is built to deliver impact at every stage. The program will also emphasize job creation, youth participation, organized leagues for boys and girls, community engagement, and the stimulation of local commercial activities, FIFA said. And there's also a clip that I saw that Trump with FIFA where he like teased, celebrity players coming and visiting Gaza. I don't think I have the clip handy, but that's fine. But, like Ronaldo visited, who's the most famous. I think Ronaldo is not only the most famous soccer player in the world, but he's also has the most followers of anybody in the world on social media, something ridiculous like that. But Ronaldo is friends with Trump. He plays in the Saudi league. He's very good friends with the MBS. The Saudis recruited him away from Spain. He played for Real Madrid, which is, like the Dallas Cowboys of European soccer. So I think we'll see that kind of thing happen. Now, again, you can argue that that's a little superficial, but culture is very important. Normalizing life is very important if you want to stabilize things, and giving children activities that bring them off the streets and give them something to do with their time, like play soccer. That's how you prevent them from joining gangs like Hamas. Okay. That's how you get them from joining the Bloods and the Crips in Chicago. Is you give them after school programs, you give them football, you give them basketball, you give them soccer, you give them stuff to do with their energy other than like hang out in the streets and form gangs. So if you want to stop Hamas from proliferating, this is how you do it. You get FIFA involved and you get the kids playing soccer. The other thing to think about with the Board of Peace is that if you have all these billionaires investing, we don't know who the people are yet. Trump hasn't released a list. We don't know who the investors are. We do know that Saudi Arabia they said they're going to pledge $1 billion for, I think it's like humanitarian aid and social services and stuff for the Palestinian people. I'm sure we'll see more announcements giving details of that and other programs like that. But the more you see billionaires from specifically America, but just billionaires in general, people who have political clout, people who are putting their thumb on the scale of politics through lobbying, right? The more you see them invest money in Gaza, the more you're going to see them protect that interest. Does that make sense? One of the reasons that I think Palestine just gets raped over and over and over again by Israel and nobody says anything is because there's no money invested there, right? If you tried to turn around and do what they're doing to Gaza in, say, Cairo, Egypt, where there's tons of money invested, or Riyadh, or say Ankara, Turkey, there are people who have money invested there. Oman, Qatar, right? They want to protect that investment. So if suddenly missiles start flying into a city where you have millions or billions of dollars invested, even if the missile doesn't hit your building, the missile flying into your city where your money's invested is going to have an economic impact on your investment, on your real estate development, because people aren't going to want to visit a city where missiles fly into that city. So what's going to happen? These billionaires are now going to be incentivized to go to Washington and say, hey, you better not let those damn Israelis fire their missiles into Gaza City, because I have a building that I built there that I spent $100 million on, that I'm collecting rent on every month. And nobody's going to want to live in Gaza City if there's a missile flying in there every month. So you better not be letting them send missiles in there anymore. That kind of advocacy, even if it is a little displaced because the focus is on, revenue and ROI, return on investment, doesn't matter. Even if that's the incentive and the motivation, the net effect is they're still advocating on behalf of the Gazan people. They're still advocating on behalf of the people who are living there because they have a shared interest. The people who live there don't want missiles flying into their city, and the people who've invested money to build up the city don't want their investment to get lost. Does that make sense? So the more that we encourage outside investment into the Middle East at large, the more you're going to get that those investors putting their thumb on the scale of Washington and other places and saying, hey, we don't want conflict anymore. Like, hey, IDF, no, we don't want you to go into Lebanon and fight the Hezbollah. We don't want you going into Syria to fight al-Jilani. We don't want you going into Jordan. We don't want you going into Palestine. We don't want you going into Egypt or whatever it is. The push for peace is going to be coming from the billionaire class, which is ultimately needs to happen if you want it to be effective. Because while I think that the elites are the problem when it comes to globalization, when it comes to conflict, when it comes to a lot of this stuff that plagues our society, it's important to point out that the globalist, like the billionaire class, is not like a monolith. They're not all on the same team. They're factions within the billionaires class, and they all are jockeying with one another for position and clout. When they are investing in companies, when they're shorting the market, when they're playing those kind of games, they're playing those games against one another as much as they are against us. So if you can get a few of those groups pushing back against the other groups because they have a vested interest, not because they're doing it out of altruism or whatever, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. So that's kind of how I think you turn some of those groups against one another. And by the way, there probably are plenty of real estate developers who would invest in Saudi or in Gaza, who do have their heart in the right place, who are more altruistic than maybe we would give them credit for. But I think from a purely objective standpoint, if you don't want to go there, if you want to assume that every billionaire in the world is evil and self-serving and selfish, that can still be weaponized in a positive way and used to promote peace if you understand human nature and you understand how they're going to protect their investment. And I think Trump is really, really good at understanding those dynamics and then using those dynamics to turn the system against itself, if that makes sense. So with that said, let's pivot back to Iran. Okay, so Trump says he's weighing a strike on Iran as Tehran says draft deal coming soon. And you know what? Before we go there, let's go to this other clip that I mentioned that I said I saw and I wanted to look at. So I said that when I was looking for that post about Iran and Egypt, I saw this. I don't know if that's the best one. This one's better. From the cradle. All right. Share my screen. So I was just trying to make sure I had the right one. All right. I think it's sharing my audio, so hopefully it'll come through.
Which is in Syria. Secretary Rubio, after his meeting in Munich with the Syrian Foreign Minister and the Kurdish General Muslim Abdi, he said that President Trump was directly involved in efforts to stop the fighting between the Kurds and the Syrians. How will your administration will make sure that this peace is sustained? And do you support the idea?
Well, it's a very different topic, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time. But all I can say is that the president of Syria, who I essentially put there, is doing a phenomenal job. He's a rough guy. He's not a choir boy. A choir boy couldn't do it. But Syria is coming together, really coming together well. And thus far, he's been very good to the Kurds. Yeah.
Okay, so the key thing there is that he said, I basically put Jelani in there. He installed Jelani. That's what Trump just said. And remember, that was December 7th, 2024. That was, I'm sorry, 2024. So that was in between Trump getting elected and Trump entering office. And we've gone over that like history many, many, many times. But just to remind you, in the weeks leading up to that moment when Assad had to like flee Syria, he had to flee Damascus and go to Latakia, the Russian base there. And then the Russians forced him on a helicopter and flew him and his family to Moscow. In the weeks leading up to that, Turkey, Russia, and Iran were meeting many times to coordinate what's going to happen with Syria. That was called the what's that town called? What's that city called? The Asa. Is it Asa? What's the one in Kazakhstan? The Asa Accords. Kazakhstan. I'm having a brain fart here, but it's what's their capital? Astana, the Astana protocol, I think is what it was called, right? The Astana Accords, the Astana Agreement. Yeah, the Astana Accords refers to a series of diplomatic efforts initiated in 2016 and formalized in 2017, led by Russia, Iran, and Turkey as guarantor states to establish a framework for reducing violence in the Syrian civil war. And that was the Astana process, I think is what it's actually referred to. The Astana process. Yeah. And yeah, so that's really, really interesting. And then the other clip that I actually think is worth watching, we have a bunch of clips from the Saudi or from the Russians on Saudi, because apparently this week they were celebrating their 100-year anniversary, the 100th anniversary, a century of diplomacy between Russia and Saudi Arabia. And so that was being highlighted over and over and over again throughout the Russian press by Sergei Lavrov and others, Kirill Dmitriev. And Lavrov said something very nice about MBS. And what he said was that Saudi MBS is the leader of the Muslim world. He said it's all because of him that all the things that we're seeing happen in the Middle East are happening. So this is news from right now. It says an Italian newspaper, Saudi General, quote, the presence of Lavrov and Secretary Rubio in Riyadh, along with the subsequent Arab summit on Gaza, highlights the new role Saudi Arabia is carving out for itself in regional and global politics. MBS can now claim credit for bringing Russians and Americans to the same table. That's from a year ago. So that's not from, I'm sorry. I keep seeing 2025 and thinking 2026. But that's exactly what Lavrov said about MBS. He said MBS is the guy. MBS is the crown prince of Saudi. The crown prince of Saudi Arabia is the leader of the Muslim world, and he is the reason that we have achieved so much progress when it comes to the Middle East. So yeah, the search function on this on X is kind of dropped off, because when you search, it's like, oh, the top hits are from 3 years ago. Why would I want to see something that's from 3 years ago? So you still got some work to do on that, Elon. But we can kind of pivot away from the Arabs and go to the Iranians now and look at what's happening most recently there. So we'll go back to the Arab News article. Trump says weighing strike on Iran as Tehran says draft deal coming soon. U.S. President Donald Trump said he was considering a limited strike on Iran after ordering a major naval buildup in the Middle East aimed at heaping pressure on Tehran to cut a deal to curb its nuclear program. The latest threat came after Iran's foreign minister said a draft proposal for an agreement with Washington would be ready in a matter of days following negotiations between the two sides in Geneva earlier this week. Trump had suggested on Thursday that bad things would happen if Tehran did not strike a deal within 10 days, which he subsequently extended to 15. Asked by a reporter on Friday whether he was contemplating a limited military strike, Trump answered, "The most I can say is I'm considering it." After the talks in Geneva, Tehran said the two sides had agreed to submit drafts of a potential agreement, which Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told U.S. media would be the next step. Quote, "I believe that in the next 2-3 days that would be ready. And after final confirmation by my superiors, that would be handed over to Steve Witkoff," he said, referring to Trump's Middle East negotiator. Araghchi also said U.S. negotiators had not requested that Tehran end its nuclear enrichment program, contradicting statements from American officials. Quote, "We have not offered any suspension, and the U.S. side has not asked for zero enrichment," he said in an interview released Friday by U.S. TV network MS Now. "What we are now talking about is how to make sure that Iran's nuclear program, including enrichment, is peaceful and will remain peaceful forever," he said. He added. His comments stand in contrast to information relayed by high-ranking U.S. officials, including Trump, who has repeatedly said Iran must not be allowed to enrich uranium at any level. Western countries accuse the Islamic Republic of seeking to acquire nuclear weapons, which Tehran denies, though it insists on its right to enrichment for civilian purposes. Iran, for its part, is seeking to negotiate an end to sanctions that have proven to be a massive drag on its economy. Economic hardships sparked protests in December that evolved into a nation. Yeah, and then it just gets into the protests. So this is exactly what I was hoping to see. This is exactly what I was waiting for. And I think this has always been the truth. Trump has talked about many, many times. I wouldn't say many, many times, but many, many times last summer after the 12-day war, both him and JD Vance alluded to, I think even Rubio may have mentioned it, investing to rebuild nuclear reactors in Iran, which again suggests that maybe the whole Operation Midnight Hammer didn't even happen. Because why would we blow up a nuclear facility to turn around and build a brand new nuclear facility? It's like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Doesn't make any sense. But again, like, people get really, really sensitive about this stuff, and it makes them feel better to believe the story. So believe the story if you want to believe the story. If you want to believe that we did the Top Gun Maverick attack in Iran, believe the story. Whatever blows your hair back. The really interesting part about this is the development as it relates to Saudi Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia was given special privileges now related to nuclear. So U.S. drops IAEA inspection rules and omits uranium enrichment bans on Saudi nuclear deal, according to Reuters. We'll pull up that article. The pact would put U.S. industry at the center of Riyadh's nuclear build-out, giving Washington significant influence over Saudi nuclear operations. So this is what we talked about when the agreement was first signed with MBS back in November, I think it was. November when he visited. And they signed Section 123 of the 1954 Consortium Agreement. I think is what it was called. Was it the Consortium Agreement? No. The Nuclear Proliferation Treaty or whatever, however it's worded. But what that says is that specific section 123 is what is necessary in order to allow U.S. companies and contractors to go work in a foreign country. We didn't have that signed with Saudi Arabia. We signed it in November. And all the signal was that we were going to move in and put a bid in to build the nuclear reactor. Saudi Arabia, MBS, currently has two construction bids out to build two different nuclear reactors. Up until that point in November, I think it was a South Korean company, the same company that built the reactor for the Emirates, for the UAE, they were the leader in the clubhouse. They were the one with the winning bid. But MBS made it very clear, I want an American bid before I finalize, before I pick a winner and move into contract negotiation and contract signing. I want to see the Americans bid on this. Before the Americans can bid on it, he has to sign Section 123, which happened in November. So now, since that, we have this story, which is U.S. removing guardrails from proposed Saudi nuclear deal, documents say. Saudi Arabia, top oil exporter, wants to build nuclear reactors. The U.S. removes guardrails on enrichment, snap UN inspections, and documents show. President Donald Trump has told Congress he is pursuing a civil nuclear pact with Saudi Arabia that does not include non-proliferation safeguards the U.S. has long said would ensure the kingdom does not develop nuclear weapons. According to a copy of the document sent to Congress and reviewed by Reuters, Trump, a Republican, and former President Joe Biden, a Democrat, have worked with Saudi Arabia on paths to building the first civil nuclear power plants for the kingdom. The development comes amid fears of a new global nuclear arms race following the expiration earlier this month of the last strategic arms limitation treaty between Russia and the United States, and China's moves to expand its own nuclear arsenal. Arms control groups and many Democrats and some leading Republicans, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio when he served in the Senate, have insisted that any agreement come with guardrails, including that Saudi Arabia not have the ability to enrich uranium or to reprocess spent nuclear fuel, potential pathways to weapons, demands made by successive U.S. administrations. They also insist that Saudi Arabia agreed to the so-called additional protocol that grants the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency broad and more intrusive oversight of a country's nuclear activities, such as the power to carry out snap inspections at undeclared locations. The Trump administration sent an initial report to leaders on some congressional committees in November, a copy of which was seen by Reuters, that it is required to send if it is not pursuing the additional protocol, the Arms Control Association and advocacy group said on Thursday. The report, quote, raises concerns that the Trump administration has not carefully considered the proliferation risks posed by its proposed nuclear cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia or the precedent this agreement may set. Kelsey Davenport, the head of non-proliferation policy for ACA, said in an article published on Thursday. Trump's report to Congress says that the draft U.S.-Saudi pact on civil nuclear, known as a 1-2-3 agreement, there you go, puts the U.S. industry at the heart of Saudi Arabia's civil nuclear development, ensuring nuclear proliferation safeguards are in place. The document, however, opens the way to Saudi Arabia also having an enrichment program as it refers to, quote, additional safeguards and verification measures to the most sensitive areas of potential nuclear cooperation between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, including enrichment and reprocessing. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, has said that the kingdom would seek to develop nuclear weapons if regional rival Iran did so. Quote, if they get one, we have to get one, the Crown Prince told Fox News in 2023. That was September 2023, weeks before the October 7th attack. I believe if I have my calendar correct in my head, saying a weapon would be necessary for security reasons and for balancing power in the Middle East, but we don't want to see that. The last part's important. The White House and the State Department did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Saudi Arabia's embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Congressional check. Davenport said it behooves Congress to provide a check on the administration's power to strike an agreement with the kingdom and consider not just the implications for Saudi Arabia, but also for the precedent that this deal will set, and vigorously examine the terms of the proposed 1-2-3 agreement. The Trump administration could submit the 1-2-3 agreement to Congress as soon as February 22nd, ACA said, as it has about 90 days after the report to Congress to send it, unless both the Senate and the U.S. House pass resolutions opposing the 1-2-3 agreement within 90 days, it would go into effect and allow Saudi Arabia a civil nuclear program. Yeah, so like, again, oh my gosh, shock and awe, they're doing this, but been saying this for months. This was coming. This is not a shock at all. This is exactly what I expected to happen. And this is what we want to see. Like, General Quast talks about nuclear energy as the path forward for the golden age. That means everybody has to have it. We can't have a situation where we have haves and have-nots. We can't have a situation where the U.S. gets it, but nobody else gets it, or U.S. in Europe gets it, but nobody else gets it, or U.S., Russia, China gets it, but nobody else gets it. It's got to be everybody. Everybody's got to have the golden age, or otherwise nobody gets the golden age, because you will have conflict from the countries that don't get access to technology. That's just a natural byproduct of human nature. It's human nature. So we love to see this. We should trust Saudi Arabia. I think it's very silly to say that we're not going to trust Saudi Arabia. They are a tremendous partner for us. They've always been a great partner for us. There have been bad elements in the Saudi royal family that funded things like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, potentially maybe 9/11. But those elements have been dealt with by MBS. He is the only person in the world, aside from maybe Putin and Xi, who have actually, well, Maduro did it as well, who have actually gone through their own society and combed out all of the bad actors. MBS is unique in that group because he actually went and arrested his own family members. He arrested his own uncle, his father's full brother, meaning his father's father, had many wives, but had, I think it was 7 children or 7 sons at least, with one woman, and one of those sons which would be his father's full brother, MBS arrested because he was part of this group of bad actors. So he has demonstrated a willingness to go after people and hold them accountable, including his own blood, And that's a lot more than anybody in America can say, because we haven't arrested anybody as far as it goes, as far as 9/11 and that stuff's concerned. So, you know, the Saudis, I think, have more honor than we do. I think Russia has more honor than we do. China, frankly, has more honor than we do, because they say what they mean and they mean what they say. And the best example of this, of course, is the naval exercise in the Persian Gulf. We have, I think we may have mentioned this at the end of the day on Tuesday, but we had Russia, China, and Iran do naval exercises a few days ago. This was announced like last week, but the media was too like worked up over whatever it is that they hyperventilate about on any given day. So yeah, here you go. 3 weeks ago from the Middle East Monitor, Iran plans to hold joint naval drills with China and Russia in the northern Indian Ocean. This is from January 31st. Now, remember, the Epstein files came out on January 30th, so everybody was too busy, you know, putting out their clickbait and combing through the Epstein files to notice this. But they announced this 3 weeks ago. They said, "Hey, we're gonna do a joint naval exercise," and then all of a sudden, 2 days ago, the Russian ships show up, the Chinese ships show up, and everyone's freaking out. Oh my gosh, it's Vladimir Putin's music. Oh my gosh, Vladimir Putin is here. Yeah, Putin is there, keeping his word to the Iranians that he's not going to let the Zionists come in and destabilize the Middle East. And I think that says a lot about Putin's character, says a lot about Xi's character. I wish that we had leaders in our country, aside from President Trump, who were trustworthy, who said what they meant what they said, and were respected around the world. Unfortunately, nobody around the world respects the Republicans or the Democrats because they're all lying sociopaths and cutthroats. They do respect President Trump because President Trump is a man of his word. And it's amazing once you establish that standard, how you can win people over and you can actually get shit done. But when everybody thinks that you're a lying sociopath or a schizophrenic, you know, which is what our political system is, you know, one day we love a country, the next day we don't based on whoever's in power. Yeah, I think that's very common. The last article we will cover, Trump wants Russia and China on the board of peace, kind of in the spirit of what we just discussed. Moscow said it is open to the idea, while Beijing has declined to join, citing commitment to the UN-centered international system. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he would love to see Russia and China join his board of peace, established to guide the stabilization of Gaza following the Israel-Hamas war. Moscow earlier signaled that it was contemplating the idea, while China has declined, citing commitments to the UN. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on Thursday, Trump said many countries had already joined the board and that we have a lot that are going through that process of getting on. I would love to, this is a quote from Trump. I would love to have China and Russia, he said. They've been invited. You need both. They need all persuasions, no discrimination. Trump's remarks came after the board held its inaugural meeting in Washington, drawing heads of state and senior officials from around 40 countries. Over 20 nations have accepted the American invitation to join the board, with roughly 35 others expressing interest in the idea. However, several major Western countries, including Germany, France, the UK, and Italy, declined the offer. While some said they were concerned that the body could undermine the UN authority, others cited potential Russian involvement. Good. I'm glad the Russians are scaring y'all off. Formally established on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos in January, the board is chaired by Trump for life and tasked with overseeing Gaza's reconstruction and ceasefire implementation. The board has also been criticized for having no Palestinian representation, even as Israel has accepted the invitation to join. Russia has not formally joined, but said it had received an invitation and was studying the proposal. In January, President Vladimir Putin also floated contributing $1 billion sourced from Russian sovereign assets frozen in the U.S., the exact fee for the permanent seat, even before a final membership decision was reached. Moscow said, however, it had not yet received a response in the proposal. China declined the invitation, citing its commitments to true multilateralism and the UN-centered international system. And I guess that just reminds me about the Kirill Dmitriev post. Let's look at that real quick, because he corrected a report that was put out, a bad report that was put out, but I think it was Bloomberg. And the report was that Trump, this one. Well, it was Bricks News that published the post, but I forget which outlet it was basing the reporting on. It would be really great, guys, Bricks News, if you would just put the link, source your claims. It says, Justin, this is from 2 days ago. Russia offers the U.S. $12 trillion in deals in exchange for lifting sanctions. The Economist, I'm sorry. The Economist reports. And then Kirill Dmitriev says, fake news. The U.S. will eventually lift sanctions because sanctions on Russia costs U.S. businesses $300 billion a year. Lifting sanctions on Russia is in the U.S. interest. The portfolio of potential U.S.-Russia projects is over $14 trillion. Yeah, then I responded, based, Russia can and should become America's most important partner. And Dmitriev responded to that with a handshake emoji, which just goes to show that Dmitriev, dude, if you want an interview, come on the show. Let's talk. I tried to DM you, but the DM feature on your account, I think, has been disabled. So let's talk. If anyone in Moscow is listening right now, I would love to interview Kirill Dmitriev about the economic opportunities, the $14 trillion portfolio that he mentions. So let's do that. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all being here. If y'all enjoyed the show, please hit the thumbs up. Let's check in on the chat, which I haven't done yet because it's been a busy day. Wait, we got Bay Theater Dave throwing a link in the chat. What is that from C-SPAN? Let's investigate this. Bay Theater Dave. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. This is notable. Appreciate you, Dave. Let's look at this. This is why I should watch the chat a little more often, since y'all always have good stuff.
I would also like to take a moment to address today's Supreme Court ruling. I would also like to take a moment to address today's Supreme Court ruling, and I would note that I did not change a single word in my speech post the ruling. President Trump will always put our national security and Americans first. And as I have said before, the president has multiple tools in his toolbox. Let's be clear about what today's ruling was and what it wasn't. Despite the misplaced gloating from Democrats, ill-informed media outlets, and the very people who gutted our industrial base, the court did not rule against President Trump's tariffs. 6 justices simply ruled that IEEPA authorities cannot be used to raise even $1 of revenue. This administration will invoke alternative legal authorities to replace the IEEPA tariffs. We will be leveraging Section 232 and Section 301 tariff authorities that have been validated through thousands of legal challenges. Treasury's estimates show that the use of Section 122 authority, combined with potentially enhanced Section 232 and Section 301 tariffs, will result in virtually unchanged tariff revenue in 2026. And with
All right, Dave, Bay Theater Dave, coming in with the clutch clip. And this is why we love Scott Bessent. It's like, okay, Supreme Court that's clearly owned by a foreign interest group. We will guess which one. Yeah, you wanna stop us coming in through the front door? We'll just come in through the side door. Like, you want to play lawfare? We can play games all day. Let's use the system against itself. Let's use loopholes. We'll work around you. Let them come out and tell the American people that we can have prosperity. Let them come out and tell the American people that we can have a protected marketplace that's protected from slave systems and from foreign lands. Like, let them come out and tell us that. Tell us who you are. We love to hear that. Bread Hour rant from Bread Hour, $5. If billionaires start a war under false or unjust pretenses, is that not perhaps 100,000 premeditated murders? So should the penalty in a just world not be death? I mean, I'm not arguing against that. I think that is actually the logic of that is really, really interesting. Like if they can prove in a court of law that a war was facilitated by a special interest group, a small group of people, then I think attributing every death in that war to those people makes all the sense in the world to me. And I would love to see that that tested. We should test that theory out. Polar Spark says, "Damn, Ghost looks 20 years older." Yeah, I guess it's just been a rough week. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll call it quits there. So everyone hit the thumbs up. Let's stick around Badlands Media. Subscribe if you're new here. We'll be back on Thursday or Tuesday with this show, but we'll also be doing the Book of Trump on Monday night. We're going to do the Maidan coup. So Ukraine, the time period from 2010 to 2014, understanding exactly what happened there, who the players were that were involved, and why it happened. Which, I don't know how many people have actually dug into that, but I think it's good to do that. Yeah, so we'll just take it from there. All right. Y'all have a great weekend. Thumbs up on the show.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.